That is what the market expects, and that's the market and environment we expect to be operating in, what is our vision for what we want our organization to be? Do we need to relook at our values? What are our strategies? Finally, we will look at how all the functions are then aligned to ensure that they are supporting the vision we've defined for the markets we're going after. A subtending question which we look at near the end of each session is, do we have the talent and the capacity to make the change? A most difficult question. A third story. Recently I had the opportunity to hear an executive from a large copier manufacturing company talk about a learning problem they had with one of their organizations. See if this sounds familiar to any of the problems you face in your companies. The story revolves around the repair technicians for the copier machines. With the rapid change in technology, the issue facing the company was keeping the repair technicians knowledgeable, keeping reference materials updated, and training new technicians quickly. Without continuous training, the technicians could not know all the new innovations being released in the latest machines, how to diagnose the problems, and how to complete repairs quickly. A review of the current process revealed that during the design phase, the engineers would detail the functionality of the parts, the CAD systems would generate schematics with specifications, the outputs were compiled into manuals, and the manuals were organized in a logical way to model diagnosing a problem. The mental model and the corporate model had been used successfully for many years. The difference being that the machines continued to become more complex and the manuals became very large, cumbersome documents, too cumbersome for the technicians to even take into the buildings with them on service calls. When a new technician was hired, they would be sent off to training class for about 3 months to learn about the product line and learn how to diagnose problems. After finishing formal training, the new technicians would be assigned to work with a more experienced technician, a mentor, for a month. Finally, after 4 months, the new technicians would be assigned his or her territory or accounts to service. Then, with the changes in technology, there was a constant need for the technicians to be trained continuously, the manuals to be updated, and new diagnostic approaches to be defined. All of this took time, a lot of money, and had a negative effect on customer satisfaction, finding someone who could repair the latest model copier quickly. Analysis of the process determined several key elements. First, the diagnostic process presented in the manuals was sometimes incorrect. Corrections or revisions could take several months to be incorporated into the manuals. And with all the technology changes, the life cycle of the average correction was usually only 6 months. Second, while the manuals were presented in a logical flow, logical to somebody, if the technician followed them, it could take him or her many hours to complete a single repair. Since they had multiple service calls to make in a day, the technicians would not use the manuals. Instead, they resorted to intuition and experience to diagnose the problem. Third was training. While the company was spending great sums of money on developing continuation training, on travel to expenses to deliver the material, and on classroom time, the technicians did not seem to be learning. So soon the question changed to, how do the technicians learn? What to do? The company, which over the years has incorporated much of what Senge refers to in a learning organization and successfully has adopted total quality management, took an innovative approach, a new mental model, and decided to hire a group of anthropologists to follow the technicians for 6 months to learn how they learned, where learning took place, how they intuited solutions to problems. The goals were to capture the knowledge, creating the corporate brain, replicate the knowledge, and duplicate the process. The bottom line was to save time and money. If any of you are anthropologists, you probably won't be surprised what the company learned. The primary vehicle used by the technicians for learning was storytelling. And it was real-life stories of what happened last week, last month, yesterday, or earlier that day, which were shared around the coffee table or lunch tables in the morning or afternoon. Since limited learning occurred during training sessions, and most learning happened at the coffee table, the question was then proposed, How can we expand the coffee table? What mental model do you think was used by the managers when they heard this? The managers thought, we won't get anything done if they stay at the coffee table all day. But that wasn't the question. Keeping them at the table. The question was how to create a virtual coffee table. How could technology be introduced or integrated into the fabric of the solution? While the professionals in training, manual design, etc., all proposed solutions on how they could change their processes to address the issue, the company chose to ask the technicians for ideas on how they could replicate the storytelling and create a virtual coffee table. What are some of the possibilities you're thinking of? One approach being widely used is an open channel radio. Each member of a technician team, usually 6 to 8 people, carries a radio tuned to an open channel. They can talk to each other at any time, all day. If they are servicing a machine at a customer's office and run into a problem that they've never encountered before, they just pick up the radio and ask if someone else has run into the problem. If so, they would quickly solve it and fix the machine. If not, they bring the collective knowledge of the entire team to the problem and all can address the problem instantly. Once fixed, they all know the answer instantly. Here are some of the results. Initial training was reduced 70%. The 1-month mentoring program was eliminated. Manual updates were reduced, repairs were completed quicker, and customer satisfaction improved. What would you think if one of your teams had an idea like that? What do you think the reaction of your managers would be? What would be the mental model telling you? Scared? Or would your managers say something like, can you imagine what they'd be talking about all day? Surely they'll spend time on non-company related subjects. They'll be wasting time. Do you think they'll get any work done? Linking this story to our first segment, this copier company used systematic thinking to go beyond their mental models, built on the personal mastery of their technicians, and enhanced the brain of the organization, shared knowledge. And in using technology as an integral part of the solution versus an adjunct process. A fourth story. Another story demonstrates a company discovering how to become a learning organization using new approaches to designing software around the customer and integrating technology into the fabric of achieving their vision. The discovery came with defining the distinction between portable versus mobile. The key distinction is that portable technology means you can do the same thing as you do in any office, but you carry it with you. Portable devices are usually user-friendly, interactive electronic tools you can carry with you. Mobile technology, according to this company, is intelligent technology. Proactive, intelligent companions, which generate information. This will become clear in a moment. The charts or graphics display key characteristics or differences between portable and mobile. Note that with portable devices, the user needs to know basic to advanced computer skills. He finds that the computer is pretty essential in getting his work done. The user is generally sort of the modern road warrior traveling several days a week to multiple locations. Although considered portable, the user uses the devices in generally stationary locations, for example, at home, sitting on an airplane, in the hotel in the evening. The applications are generally the same as those the person would use in the office, and they are typically horizontal, namely word processors, spreadsheets, or electronic mail. Mobile, however, from the user's perspective, requires hardly any computer skills. The user may be used to using paper forms to complete their work, and generally they're skeptical about using a computer. The mobile device is usually used as at the point of an event or the point of data gathering. In application, mobile is usually task-specific, supporting an immediate decision, and gathers data. And the application is typically vertical, creating intelligence for further support groups. Mobile reduces the number of basic processes required in the business. With that as a background, now the story. This claims company processes a very large number of automobile and home fire insurance claims. The adjusters who view the damaged auto or destroyed home are typical users. Historically, the role of the adjuster was to view the damaged car, note down all the parts which would have to be replaced or repaired, look up the parts in a parts list, fill out a form, mail the data into a data processing center. One advancement which did take place over the years was a picture of the car with the parts displayed on a page was produced for each type or model of car and provided to the adjuster. The adjuster would just check off the parts required. I think you can already imagine some areas for efficiency and accuracy gains. However, instead of jumping to the obvious or following mental models, this company decided to have specialists follow the adjusters and observe them at work. Although many ideas emerged early on to address some of the perceived improvements, they invested 2 years in the observation process. What they discovered about themselves and their approach was as important as what they discovered they wanted to change. They had to change their vision of the role of technology and their approach from traditional to an innovative approach. They had to change how they were looking at things and how they responded and behaved. For example, their traditional approach viewed technology as supporting people in the work they performed. They looked for processes which could be adapted to the use of technology. Only those technologies which were proven were used in the planning process. Before introducing a technology, the systems people performed multiple tests and analyses. Their mental model suggested that everyone had to have access to all the data wherever they were. And, of course, only they could provide the service. What they learned emerged as their innovative view, a new mental model. Technology could be the enabler of getting work done and create intelligence. The use by the user defined what technology is required, which meant that future technologies needed to be considered. A way to learn faster what possible solutions may be available was to prototype solutions and have the users test them or play with them. Data requirements are different for each task, so data was customized to provide meaningful information to the involved users. Finally, it was realized that outside providers can provide effective solutions too. What emerged from this work was a radically changed business. The adjusters were equipped with electronic wireless pen-touch devices which communicate with the client server. The device became more than an estimating tool. It has become what the company calls a restoration management system. Briefly, the adjuster views the damaged vehicle, calls up an electronic picture of the car, touches the parts of the car needing replacement or repair. The system locates the parts, generates a cellular order for the repair, schedules the repair at a body shop of choice, rents a car if necessary to be used during the repair, arranges transportation if necessary, generates a medical loss evaluation if necessary, and soon may generate a check for the repairs claim. All of this happens in one transaction. All of this happens in front of the customer. This is why the customer says they use technology to move from an estimating tool to a restoration management system. Technology has become the fabric which allows this company to achieve their vision. They have designed their software, Nick and Oren would say, to surround the customer. Some of the benefits of this radical departure: training time for adjusters was reduced to 20 minutes from 2+ weeks. As one person said, how long does it take for someone to learn to touch a screen with a pen? Productivity and operation efficiency improved. In fact, multiple organizations with the company were eliminated. Fewer basic processes are required. Customer service and satisfaction are up. What an exciting, bold move, all based on the organization learning radically new ways of viewing the same work. Changing using systems thinking to see the flaws in their old mental models, create software around the customer, create the corporate brain, and achieve a shared vision. Story 5. I'll borrow the 5th story from Nick Imperato. The story concerns the creation of the corporate brain. The challenge: how do you capture what has been learned? How do you retain what employees bring to your organization? How do you retain what they learn while working for you? How do you make the body of knowledge available for others to use? These questions are becoming more important to companies becoming information-based because retaining top performers in a shrinking labor market becomes more difficult. The story that Nick tells is about Debbie and Randy Fields, the owners of Mrs. Fields Cookies. Back in the late 1970s, Debbie Fields began selling cookies out of a little store in Palo Alto, California. The quick success of the business led to the possibility of expansion to other locations. There was a problem, however. Debbie was a close, hands-on manager who was fanatic about quality and the work standards that led to it. The challenge was how to take Debbie's approach to the business, her sense of priorities, and somehow graft that into a management style of the people who would work in the different stores. Randy, her husband and partner, saw the dangers of old hierarchy building organizations. What Randy and his team envisioned and eventually built was a software system that captured the ideas of Debbie and other experts such as high-performing managers or corporate specialists or interested employees, had about every aspect of running the business. The goal was to collect their ideas and incorporate them as a set of recommendations that anyone in the field could call up on the computer and utilize immediately. At the same time, advice and coaching were available through instruction sets containing the collective expertise of many managers and authorities, the best and the brightest. The underlying premise in such a system is that every successful business person has a knowledge about his or her job that is partly derived from common sense shared by many and partly derived from a unique set of insights and instincts. The trick is to capture those insights in a way that makes them accessible to other people in the organization. So let's take a look at a new employee walking into a Mrs. Fields store their very first day on the job. The new employee enters the cookie store an hour before it opens and turns on the computer. The computer asks her all sorts of questions. Is it a weekend? Is it raining? Is there school today? And so on. The computer tells her that based on previous experience over the years at that location, the store's recent performance, and certain attributes of the immediate environment, all recorded in the computer memory, the pattern of answers she gave indicated that she would sell 800 cookies and muffins during the day. Further, the computer says the likely breakdown of cookies is going to be so many chocolate chip cookies, so many oatmeal cookies, and so many muffins. The computer then displays a series of graphs showing how sales will progress during the day. Muffins will go early, before lunch, and then taper off. The various chocolate products will lumber along until afternoon and then move up. This information, accompanied by recommendations about when to start baking and in what quantities for each of the products offered. The production schedule is particularly critical since the Fields policy is to throw out any cookie that doesn't sell after 2 hours. During the course of the day, the actual sales are recorded. The new data are automatically included in the forecasting model. The next day's projections, and therefore a revision of the model's predictions based on today's results. The forecast becomes more accurate each day. The organization learns. Each of the 5 stories is very different from the other in application. What's central to each of them is the organization's ability to systematically think about who they were, what mental models were holding them back, what had to be done to surround the customer. In their own way, each captured the mastery of their own players, created reservoirs of knowledge, the primary corporate asset in an information age, and moved toward becoming learning organizations. Inspired by a clear vision and supported by articulated values. In each instance, people within the organizations rose to new levels of achievement. Teams reached new levels of collaboration. They learned. Each unleashed the power of human potential. As your organizations face the challenges of moving into the information age in the global marketplace, or as you look to jump the curve on the competition, or as you search to create environments which capture the imagination and creativity of your people and which unleash their potential, learn. Few human forces are as powerful as shared visions. Imagine the power of teams of learning people, learning teams, learning organizations with a shared vision. I wish you luck. Thank you.
Gracias, señor Hoffmann. Thank you, Mr. Hoffmann. And now let us begin the second question and answer session. First question is coming from Pemex, Agua Dulce, Veracruz, Mexico. It's a question via fax and it's saying, why do you think it's more successful for an organization to lead rather than managing? And what do you mean with the word self-managing? Who does that, the team or the leader?
Okay. Again, as we look at businesses that are becoming more information-based and more global, and we look at the role of the leadership with reference to performance, I think we have to look at someone who is looking to the future and rewarding those people who are doing that, etc., versus those who are controlling or keeping the status quo because things are moving too fast in the marketplace. And as organizations get flatter, you have fewer managers, so leadership becomes much more critical for performance. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that question?
Who leads, the team or the leader?
I'm sorry, the self-managed team.
Sí, estamos hablando de
okay. With essentially a self-managed team is a team that knows what the objectives are, what the goals are, and what it is trying to accomplish. And as opposed to having managers from different disciplines working together to get the people to work together or collaborate, the team does it themselves, and they manage through the particular process or they manage through the delivery of the product. And so when I say self-managed, they make their own decisions around maybe product development, maybe product delivery, etc. However, always in the context of the business and always in the context of where the leadership wants them to go. So they are managing the day-to-day stuff with reference to that particular product or service.
Next question comes from Mexico also. Welcome. What are the values that you should use to evaluate the discipline of success, and what did they do in AT&T in order to implement changes and change inertia that was generated at all levels in order to change the structure?
I believe one of the key elements of change is communication. And so clearly having the people understand why you're doing something. So for a simple example might be, I need this report today. It's a pretty closed question or statement. But I need this report today because this information is critical for us to meet the next step of the market or the next development phase of a product, etc. So creating the context and asking the questions as managers and leaders will assist in that, which then assists in the communication. And so the communication has been clearly the foundation of how we change within our business. And I believe also the urgency created by the marketplace. The marketplace has changed. It's a very competitive environment that we exist in. And so for us to be able to survive, and we're in the information business, we clearly need to take a leadership position, and we know that we need to change constantly if we're going to be effective.
Well, this next question is coming from Brazil. Again, the same foundation, Vansolini, Sao Paulo. The new technologies tend to generate unemployment. Wouldn't this be a very strong factor that would inhibit the harnessing of potential, human potential in the enterprises? What solution do you suggest? How do you see this?
Technology, in fact, can displace people. But I think as you displace people with technology, you generally create more requirements for people on the information side of the business. As I think and reflect of what happened within our own business, clearly there was technological advances which advanced our business and reduced the number of people we needed. And to be perfectly honest, we can talk about reducing the force by maybe 40 or 80,000, depending how you look at it. And many of those advancements were based on technology. However, as the business wants or tries to become and continues to become effective in the marketplace, there are market constraints which require that you have the right resource and the right amount of resource. And that, in fact, if you can produce the products effectively and meet the demands of the customer and the marketplace by having more people, I think that's your decision. However, technology assists us in meeting our marketplace, meeting the customer's needs, and help creating new markets where, in fact, we can get fuller employment and maybe cross-train some of our employees to be effective elsewhere. And we did that as our people left our business.
Next participant is from León, Mexico. Thank you. Good morning. The question is the following. Vision and awareness are not shared automatically. It is not just everybody, it's not just a matter of everybody wanting to learn. In organizations there are interests and contradicting power struggles. So how can you establish a process for change that is not based on recipes of must-be?
Okay. Well, I'm not sure there are must-be's. Each organization, as in each culture or as each community, there are differences. And so how one looks at the principles of anything and applies them to your particular community or your particular business is sort of how are we adapting them to our understanding of our business or how we want our business to be. An example is, we talked about Peter Senge's 5 principles, the disciplines. We essentially use different terminology within our business. It's how we understand those terms. I think critical to the comment, the question, is in the shared vision, is the taking the time for all of the individuals to talk about it. That has been something that we can't overemphasize enough from our experience. And that is that unless everyone is involved in understanding how they fit, how their role, how their work fits into creating and achieving the vision, it will not be successful. And that's how you get the sharing and you get the commitment.
Now a question from Paraguay again, South America. Thank you. What possibilities do you see of implementation of mobile technology for a service enterprise that is of the traditional type? How do you get to that situation? Thank you.
One of the things that I find fascinating about the stories I told you, and by the way, those are stories of that I've heard about businesses, and I'm not personally involved in any of them. However, I thought they demonstrated the disciplines or the principles that we were speaking of. Most of the ideas that were discussed in those stories actually came from the people within the organization. So the leaders had created the environment where ideas and creativity flourished, and the people brought these to the fore. Taking a risk, then, the leaders said, how do we take this mobile technology, for example, and implement it? And so let's take the risk and go do that. So I think there's a couple of elements. As you look at a traditional business, are we looking out of the box, or are mental models telling us this is the way we've always done it, we need to continue to do it that way? Or can we look at it very differently, such as the anthropologist taking a look at the repair servicemen that I spoke about, or just hiring people to follow around these estimators for 2 years. different approaches, different ideas, changing mental models, and then taking ideas that actually came from within the organization to make it happen.
We're now participating. We now have another participant coming from Mexico. Good morning. The question is the following. According to your philosophy, what is the perfect motivation to increase a medium-sized business given the pressure that we have in Mexico today, that is emotional, political, economic, etc.?
I'm not sure I can answer that question because I don't know all of the influences of which you're speaking, and so it might be a little unfair. However, I would say that as the business looks at itself and looks at what you're trying to accomplish, have the leaders engaged all of the people to be as creative as possible, to learn what they can learn to deliver better products and services. And are you capturing that information in such a way that it will allow you to sort of jump the curve, as Nick would say, or move to the next market and continue to be successful? Some of the other influences you speak about, I'm sorry that I can't answer, and I'm afraid I would mislead you if I did.
And now a question coming from Panama. Okay, we're calling from Azuero, Panama, and we have the following question for you. How could you apply this topic of intelligent organization to the healthcare system, national healthcare system, and how could we develop those programs to benefit patients, for example? Thank you for your ideas.
Okay. I believe that the principles or the disciplines that Peter Senge talks about can be applied to both the private and the public sector. And as you look at healthcare, I believe the same is true. And I think I'll use the approach coming from a quality perspective. There's a hospital that I know that decided to redesign the hospital based on the customer or the patient. And they sort of shed all of the traditional mental models they had associated with the hospital and with administering health care. And as they were building the hospital, built and constructed the hospital around the new mental model that they had created. In this mental model, the customer or the patient drove most of their decisions, and it wasn't just looking at the physical curing of the patient as much as it was looking holistically at the individual. What were the emotional responses that went around with becoming better, etc. So, for example, they created rooms where the entire family can stay with them, or they created rooms that the family can come and cook for fellow members, etc. And so they changed completely the mental model that they had, but they did it systematically, looking at things holistically and seeing how people responded to healing as opposed to just curing a scratch or stitching something up. So I believe that it does apply.
Continuing with our session of question and answers, this question is coming from Atoyac, Mexico, Federal District. Thank you. In any enterprise, the changing at a high level of leadership can perhaps become an obstacle in fulfilling or carrying out the model that the other administration has prepared. Can you do that? What is the impact of this new management with the new team and trying to accomplish the goal?
As leaders become aware of what their decisions are and how they in fact impact what the company is doing in the marketplace, I think is probably the most powerful. However, there are times when, for example, was a very effective CEO in one of the businesses here in the United States who decided that they wanted to do precisely what we're talking about, change the organization into a learning organization, become a much leaner and flatter organization structurally. The individual, while he was very motivated to do it, really didn't have the abilities. And if you remember the equation that we displayed earlier, performance equals ability times motivation times role, is that he didn't have the ability and then didn't know what his role was in that change. And in fact, he was removed from the business. So not all leaders have the ability to make the change. However, I think one of the things that has occurred, at least in the industry that I work in, is that because ideas can start anywhere within the business, many times the organization, somewhere within the organization, an idea bubbles up and one of the leaders will ultimately champion it, and that's how the organization change. So I think we have to remember that the leaders don't have all the ideas and don't make all the changes, but in fact many ideas come from within the organization and ought to be rewarded and recognized, and that helps change the leadership.
Ahora nos trasladamos a Coahuila, México.
And now,
La siguiente llamada
Coahuila,
viene del
Mexico.
Instituto
This
Tecnológico
call is
de
coming from
Saltillo.
Mexico.
Adelante.
Gracias. ¿Cómo se puede
How can you identify an organization that is not learning?
y cuáles serían los riesgos que
And what would be the risks involved?
I think sometimes from the inside it's difficult to determine whether or not an organization is learning. However, if you're continuing to use the same approach to all of the problems, or continuing to use the same analysis to everything without interjecting new ideas, and circling back, as Peter Senge would say, starting with what is the gap, what needs to be identified, where are we trying to go, and how are we going to get there, and then say, we've done this, now let's go back and see if we've closed the gap at all. You would have to, let's see where, as the, kind of lost my train of thought, I'm sorry here. As we look at where, as we've closed the gap, we've made those decisions within the organization. I gotta go back to the question. The question was where do and how do, what are some of the dangers of not recognizing your learning organization? If you haven't gone through this sort of process of checking back in and then learning from that and capturing that information and sharing with the organization, in fact, then you probably are not becoming a learning organization. And I think the danger is that you'll start losing market, you'll start losing position in the market, and you'll start losing people. Those are dangers, I believe, of not becoming a learning organization in the global age today. And I'm sorry that I just lost my train of thought on you all.
Damos participación ahora a otra llamada que
And now we have a call coming in from Argentina, from the University in Cordoba. Good afternoon. Leadership must be more intense in some levels of the organization. What is this intensity dependent upon?
And I'm not sure I have the answer to that question. I believe that leadership can emerge from anywhere. I believe that the leaders need to be more focused in this age on where the organization is going than on managing the organization, at least the top leadership and much of the middle leadership of the organization. And I believe as the leaders create the environment where people can be successful, and that basically means rewarding those who are aligned with the values of the business and rewarding and recognizing those and making sure that they are the most rewarded, is where you will gain leverage so that managers can move to performing and playing the role more as leaders. So as you look at the role of leadership, It's very strong leadership at the top, but within the organization, depending on what is best suiting the market, I believe that strong leaders need to emerge from various parts of it, depending on how it will help you achieve your vision as a business. And I think I'll leave it at that. There's a lot of nuances, unfortunately, that would take a lot more time than we have today. And maybe we can follow up on that during our next, the next broadcast next year.
Una pregunta más nos viene a esta videoconferencia, viene de Tepic, Nayarit.
This is a question coming from Mexico.
Le escuchamos.
Mr. Hoffmann, in the intelligent organization of today, what is the role of creativity, spontaneity, ingenuity, and inspiration, which in many, many cases are the basis for the development and growth of an organization? In other words, that spark, that initial spark. Can you tell us what the role of this spark is in a modern organization?
Well, I believe it's what you just said. It's the spark of the organization, and it's the heart of the organization, which will, if captured and shared, and that's what we're talking about here with the learning, becoming a learning organization, capturing and sharing that information so that we can build on that for the future, is clearly what will make you successful. And so the creativity and learning absolutely go together. I don't see them as being two separate items, and I believe them emerging from the same heart, the people of the organization.
Muchas gracias, señor Hoffmann.
Thank you very much.
We hope that you have enjoyed this video conference. We will continue transmitting programs on the latest in management techniques and systems and global competitiveness. We invite you to participate on October 5 in the 6th video conference of our Management Systems for the 21st Century series entitled ISO 9000, How to Implement a Quality System. For additional information on ITC programs, you may consult your print package where you will find the dates and specific topics of our 3 series. On behalf of all of us who collaborate with the International Training Center, I thank you for your participation and interest in today's program. Thank you very much and see you soon.